Artistically, one of the best legacies of the Georgian period is undoubtedly Richmond Bridge, which is exactly contemporary with the theatre. It's an extraordinary story. The old bridge over the Swale was destroyed by a flood in 1771. Now the southern half belonged to the county, and the northern half to the corporation. This led to years of bickering. The architect was John Carr of York, but there were separate contracts and separate contractors, and it's said that the county's half was finished 3 years before the town's. But how you harbour a 3-arch stone bridge worries me, I must confess. It's a very handsome structure, built of that hard sandstone from the quarry at Gatherley Moor. In Newbiggin, just off the Market Square, is a most individual building in the other Georgian style. Gothic with a K, Gothic. A Georgian improvisation on the medieval Gothic. Two fields away, and even more remarkable, is Culloden Tower, built in 1747. It's a fine building, splendidly sited, where once had stood a peel tower, a keep standing in isolation of which the existing rectangular base of rubble stone may well be a part. The 2 upper stories, faced with smooth sandstone, are octagonal, and at one corner there's a projecting stair turret. Within, there were once 2 good rooms, but now, alas, time and hooligans have done their worst. One of the plaster ceilings is still happily intact. This isn't plaster, but wood, carved with real assurance. Culloden Tower is in the private park of Temple Lodge, believed to have been built in 1769. The house itself is also Gothic, but was enlarged about 1850. The castellations must be early Victorian. The effect is decidedly picturesque, and there's none of that rather gimcrack-looking cement rendering, which all too often disfigures buildings of this type. All here is good sandstone. From the front door, we can move straight to a more spectacular example in the same style here. The date of this door is known, 1848. It belongs to what, until it was closed about 1963, was Richmond's railway station. The station was an excellent building by the Yorkshire architect G.T. Andrews. And what's so splendid, we can say in this case not only was, but is. For it was bought by the district council, who have leased it as a garden centre. Well, this is a shining example of what enterprise and imagination can do to save an excellent building no longer required for its original purpose. What an object lesson we have here. All over the country there are still stations, well over 1,000 of them, some of them really well designed and perfectly capable of adaptation, and yet they are left standing empty and a prey to vandals. It's a tragedy. Some of our most enjoyable Victorian buildings are, or were, stations. And it's sheer folly to leave them to be vandalized when they could be transformed and put to really good use, as this one has been. The Richmondshire District Council have gone further. Not only have they bought the station, but over 2 miles of the former track as well, and turned it into a most agreeable walk, perhaps the pleasantest way of getting from Richmond to Easby Abbey. Full marks again to the council. Why isn't this done too, far more often? I wish everything here was as good. In the 30s, with an expanding population and admittedly no planning legislation, there was this. If houses have to look commonplace, shouldn't they be decently concealed? But still worse, and quite recently, we find this. How can planning permission have been given for such architectural eyesores as these? So prominently sited and so manifestly built of the wrong materials. But to their great credit, in 1965 the corporation rebuilt 2 houses in Newbiggin as 6 flats. Much of the original stone was salvaged for this new rubble stone front. They scrupulously adhered to the building line and the roof line of the street. Another excellent example of post-war council housing is St. James's Chapel Wyne, built almost entirely in the local stone, a mixture of sandstone, limestone, and river cobbles. And recently, at the foot of Tower Hill, an ugly building has been taken down and replaced by 3 well-designed single-story houses for the elderly. Now, the demolition revealed a view of the castle not seen for over a century. The central chimney would have ruined this view, but it remains unimpaired because the architect, with the most commendable sensitivity, shifted this stack to one side. All these are very encouraging signs. And since 1971, the whole of the old town and much of its setting has very rightly been designated under the Civic Amenities Act of 1967 as a conservation area. In the defense of our old towns, that act is without a doubt the most effective piece of legislation so far, and its powers should be used to the full. Preserve what is worth preserving. Watch the building lines. Wherever possible, use the local materials. And avoid naked concrete, because concrete never weathers, it only cracks and stains and in time looks shabby. Well, those are some of the precepts to follow if we want to keep places like Richmond looking worthy of their past.
On Friday morning, we stop off at a little-known town just north of the Humber with a medieval Minster church. Beverley, North Humberside, is the English town on Friday at 8:15. And you may like to know that there's a video that accompanies the series, and it's available from the usual outlets.